Mr. Gove, a message yesterday from the Prime Minister. There's absolutely no doubt about what he wants us to do, but why do you suppose the previous 2 weeks he was effectively ignored? Good morning.
Good morning, Nick. I think it's critically important that people do follow the strong lead that the Prime Minister has given. Overwhelmingly, people were practicing social distancing, but there were cases at the weekend where people were not doing what they should in order to limit the spread of the disease. And it's vitally important that we do limit that spread, because if we can reduce the rate at which people are infected, we can strengthen our NHS and protect lives.
If you are to limit the spread, I'm sure you're aware, or your colleagues or Mr. Gove are aware, of the sort of cramming we have of the London Underground and some rail services in our major cities such as London and Manchester. This is distinctly unhealthy, Mr. Gove. What can be done? Was Mayor Khan wrong to restrict services?
We've been talking with the Mayor and with the Transport Secretary in order to ensure that we can maintain a public transport system, and we can maintain it at a frequency which means that we limit the amount of social contact that people have on the London Underground and on other forms of transport.
Yes, but Mr. Gove, they are the proverbial... They're packed like sardines this morning. I have a couple of pictures from listeners. This is not healthy.
It's not healthy. It should be the case, again, wherever people can work from home, they should. People should
Mr.
stay
Gove,
at home. It is the case.
People aren't.
No, of course,
people
Nick,
can't
sorry.
coming in for fun, sir. They're coming in because they clean our hospitals, they drive our fire engines,
Absolutely.
they do whatever they do, and they're crammed. Like, I appreciate it's not your. I realise you don't run the railways, but something needs to be done. Surely here we need more trains, not less.
You're right. And I know that the Transport Secretary and the Mayor of London have been talking about this, because the frequency of trains outside London is less because of the steps that the Transport Secretary has taken. We hope to be able to ensure that we can support the Tube and London Transport to run trains at a frequency and in a way which means that people can practice social distancing.
Something of this magnitude has never been seen by this nation before, so there's always going to be wrinkles that need to be ironed out. Do you accept that there are areas of confusion? I've had so many, such as someone who's due this weekend to have their children. Sadly, he's no longer with his wife. Is he allowed to travel to pick up the children? What exactly defines a key worker? Surely it can't be anyone who can't work from home, because that includes a chimney sweep and a gas engineer. Where does it all end, Mr. Gove?
Well, let me try and deal with each of those specific examples. The government's issued guidance overnight. I hope people will have the chance to read it. I know that there will always be specific cases where people will want greater clarity. It is the case, and your question helps me to clarify this, that if it is the case that you're a divorced or separated couple, then children under the age of 18 can move between one parent's home and another. Now, obviously, we want to limit as much as possible, people moving between homes. But for children under the age of 18, they can see their respective parents. And then again, for people who are performing functions, there are those who are absolutely key to the effective delivery of the public services upon which we rely. We know who they are, the people, the heroes who work in the National Health Service, in the social care sector, those who are working in food production and delivery. But there are also other people who can go to work and who cannot work from home, but who also help to ensure that life of the nation keeps running. Those who are involved, for example, in construction.
I was going to ask you the wisdom of keeping construction sites open. We've heard from one man who's one of 800 people working in a site where there are only 2 finger scanners as they enter the site for security, and there's a canteen that can only take 100 at a time. With the best will in the world, and I'm sure you've been on building sites, Mr. Gove, social distancing is damn tough.
It is difficult, and one of the things that we're asking employers to do is to work with us in order to ensure that we can safeguard the health of workers. In workplaces up and down the country, people are practicing, including here in the studio where I'm sitting, people are practicing social distancing measures. They're making sure that there's appropriate protective equipment and so on. And I know that people who work in construction and those who lead our major construction companies are responsible. They are reviewing how we work in order to ensure that workers can be as safe as possible.
Is Sports Direct a key function? Are their workers key or critical workers?
No. I was asked earlier if Sports Direct should remain open. I said it should not. I now understand that they will not be remaining open.
Oh, thank you for that. W.H. Smith, Mr. Gove?
It is the case that corner shops and news agents who provide people with newspapers and daily essentials can remain open, but it is vitally important, as I mentioned earlier, that people restrict their shopping. So it should be the case that people should make the minimum number of visits to shops necessary, and they should really only go for food and other essentials, but newsagents and corner shops can remain open.
Do you see a time when the police might actually fine people because they're in groups of 3 or above?
If people are operating in a way which is against the clear instructions that we have issued, and they're doing so in a way which damages or threatens public health, then it may well be appropriate, yes, to fine them.
Would you want to see that, though, Mr. Gove? We live in a country where you get fined because half a dozen people are speaking on a corner of the road.
I think that in the first instance, it will be the case that the police would say, move along, please split up. What you are doing is contributing to the spread of disease, and I hope people would then instantly, if they've made that mistake, follow the police's advice.
LBC is backing you mentioned the NHS Heroes, this national round of applause this Thursday night at 8. Will you be you may well be very busy with your cabinet colleagues. If you can, would you join in? What do you say about the importance of recognising this?
Everything that we can do to recognise the amazing sacrifices that those who work on the front line of our NHS are performing, everything that we do to celebrate them, we should. And I applaud this particular call, and I hope at 8 o'clock that I'll be in a position where I can join in the applause for those who are doing an amazing job on the front line of the NHS.
When might more help be forthcoming for the self-employed? I appreciate this probably passes to your colleague Rishi Sunak, but there's around 3-4 million of them, and there's a great concern there, Mr. Gove. I'm sure you're aware of this.
I'm totally aware, and the Chancellor and the Treasury team will be saying more about this later today.
So some form of announcement. Because you won't be surprised here, a lot of taxi drivers are concerned. They presumably are key or critical workers, aren't they, to get people around?
It is important that we make sure that for those who do need to get to work, that we provide support, and those who are working in taxis and in private hire vehicles, they are playing a part. But it is, again, critically important to say that people should only be making journeys if they absolutely need to in order to get to their workplace or to provide support to the vulnerable.
What do you and the Prime Minister need to see over the next 3 weeks that might persuade you to slightly slacken these restrictions?
I think what we need to see is a reduction in the infection rate across the country. We will review these measures at Easter in 3 weeks' time, but until then, we hope that people will do everything they can to restrict travel, to restrict movement outside the home. If we do this, and we're all in this together, then we can reduce the pressure on the NHS, and that's why it's critically important for people to stay at home, protect the NHS, protect lives.
And lastly, a little while ago I spoke with Michael Portillo, who applauded what you and your colleagues have done and said it was necessary, but questions the wisdom of the number of flights that are being allowed in from certain areas, not least Europe, as he makes the point, you could be in the same aircraft for 10 hours in a fairly restricted tube, all breathing the same air, and then you're let out at Heathrow or Glasgow or Manchester, or wherever it might be. The wisdom of that, Mr. Gove.
I think it's absolutely important that we make sure that we restrict to the bare minimum travel of
But when
all
those
kinds.
folk arrive, Mr. Gove, they just walk through Heathrow or Gatwick. There's no testing of them at all, and we don't know what they might have brought in.
We're increasing the testing that is taking place, but we are doing everything we can to restrict people coming into the country who do not need to come into the
But
country.
they're still coming in, Mr. Gove. The airports are still relatively busy as they come through. Nothing's being done. They're not being scanned. Shouldn't they be scanned?
We should be doing everything we can in order to restrict people travelling, and also in order to make sure that testing is ramped up as well, yes.
Yes, so we need scanners at our airports, do you not think?
Well, we need appropriate testing, and we are increasing the capacity to test.